Hi friends, welcome to SNCA Study Club, a platform for CA final students. Hello my dears, so here I am taking what essay 402 audit consideration relating to an entity using service organization. So before starting this essay, I have to give an overview with respect of the essay. Only then you can understand what is meant by this essay or what are the responsibility of a chartered accountant with respect of essay 402. Okay. Suppose this is ABC entity. X who is appointed as an auditor of ABC. XYZ and another organization. ABC is a large size organization. They are not having that much of enough time and employee support for the purpose of handling different process or different transaction with respect of the main business of ABC. Not main business or other matters just like payroll, salary package, pension schemes or repairing works or IT support, etc. So what they are doing? They are doing or they are outsourcing some of the functions to an outside entity. Suppose they are outsourcing transaction or process with respect of the payroll to XYZ. So XYZ firm have to provide appropriate computation with respect of the salary deduction after making appropriate payment towards various agencies, etc. So they will process the transaction with respect of the payroll and forward the same to ABC. So X has been appointed as an auditor of ABC Limited, or ABC firm. Okay. What is the responsibility of X with respect of ABC? X is responsible to express an opinion on the financial statement. X have to determine whether the financial statement is free from the risk of what? Material misstatement. What is mean by risk of material misstatement? This is the combination of inherent risk and control risk. Inherent risk, we know what mean by it, right? Control risk. What is mean by a control risk? That is, even after having an appropriate internal control system, the entity is not functioning or not following that policies or procedure, or which is not free from the risk of material misstatement. That is, it is not operating efficiently and effectively, right? So control risk can be different policies. That is, internal control system is the combination of what? Policies, procedures and practices that is to be followed by an entity for what? To attain its objective. Auditor is responsible to determine whether the internal control system is operating efficiently and effectively. So auditor have to obtain the internal control system with respect of what? Various transactions, activities and process of the organization, or with respect of different departments, different units, etc. They are getting what? Information with respect of the internal control system of various elements. But X, concerned chartered accountant, is asking ABC, hello, actually we have getting some information or evidence with respect of various matters, but we are unable to obtain what? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the payroll. That is HR department. They are making appropriate selection, recruitment or providing training to the concerned employees, but they are not maintaining different records that is showing how they are computed the payroll. So ABC is telling that actually we are sorry, chartered accountant, this is not provided because we are outsourcing this to XYZ firm. Because they have various units here, various works is handled by our unit or our company. So we are outsourcing these matters or transaction with respect of payroll to XYZ firm. So this X and this X is different, okay? Different person, okay? So X is telling that actually we are unable to express an opinion without examining the internal control system or determining whether there exists any risk of material misstatement with respect of the transaction related to payroll, we have to obtain what? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So my question is, how can get this information? So here we discuss with respect of three matters, that is ABC, which is the user entity, that is they are using the services provided by XYZ, who is the service organization. X who is the auditor of user entity. So X have to determine whether the transaction or accounts of ABC is free from the risk of material misstatement. Risk of material misstatement is the combination of inherent risk and control risk. So they have to determine whether there exists control risk. Control risk means the existing internal control system of the concerned organization is not operating efficiently and effectively. If any services has been, or if any activity or transaction has been outsourced by the concerned user entity to service organization, the concerned auditor of user entity have to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of what? The transactions or accounts or matters which has been outsourced to other entity or other organization. So this essay is mainly providing the standards or the matters that is to be followed by the chartered accountant, that is auditor, who has been appointed to audit the books of accounts or the financial statements of the user entity. So what are the solutions that is available to X? This is the next question. Okay, so here X, who is the chartered accountant, have to obtain understanding with respect of how user entity uses what? Services provided by service organization. Then X is in confusion. So X directly making a call to XYZ firm, or they are asking XYZ firm, actually I am the auditor of ABC and I got an information from ABC that you are providing the services with respect of payroll to ABC. I have to express an opinion on the financial statement and I have to obtain a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from the risk of material misstatement. Risk of material misstatement is the combination of inherent risk and control risk. So to determine whether there exists control risk, I have to check what? Internal control system with respect of each and every activities, that is the policies, procedures or process with respect of each and every activity of ABC. But I am not able to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence and to determine whether the internal control system free from the risk of material misstatement with respect of the payroll accounts, because this is handled by you. So I have to audit you. So XYZ is answering, actually Mr. X, please hear us. Please listen to us. ABC is just one of our client. We are providing these kind of services. It can be either related to payroll, pension schemes or tax planning to various other organizations also. So what will be our condition if all the auditors of that concerned unit is asking us to audit our entity? This is not possible. I will give you some other solution. XYZ is telling. So X, who is the auditor of user entity, yeah, that's also right. So what should be done? That is, what is your opinion? So XYZ is telling that you should follow SA 402. That will give you solution. So here X, who is the auditor of user entity, is following SA 402 to determine the solution or to identify the methods through which they can obtain sufficient and appropriate information or audit evidence with respect of this. So what is SA 402 is providing to X, who is the auditor of user entity? First of all, they have to perform audit procedure to determine what? Risk of material misstatement. This should be as per SA 350. This is the first one. that is identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement by using the entity and its environment. Okay, plus they should determine whether there exists any internal control system or what, any procedures to determine or to check what, the risk of misstatement in the services which has been provided by the service organization. That is, suppose this is the service organization that is providing services to the user entity, right? User entity. Service organization is providing services to the user entity. So the auditor is required to check whether the user entity is having some procedures or control system that determine the accuracy of the services that has been provided by the service organization, right? That is, auditor of the user entity should examine whether there exists relevant control, if there existing relevant control, whether it has been exercised or used by the user entity so as to determine the efficiency and effectiveness of the services which has been provided by the service organization. Then what? Auditor of the user entity should determine what? Significance, effect and nature of the services which are provided by the service organization to the user entity. Auditor should determine, first of all, which are the services which has been provided by the service organization to the user entity, then whether it is significant to the user entity, whether the services which has been provided by the service organization is significant to the user entity, what is the effect of that services on the user entity. Suppose that service organization is making some delay with respect of that services, will it affect the user entity? That should be also determined by the auditor. Then nature, the nature of services, its size, that is whether it is more material, whether it is significant, what will be the effect, these have to be determined by the auditor of the user entity. Then what? Then materiality and nature of transaction in the user entity. Transaction with respect of these services are material to the user entity. What is the nature of such transaction, which are again undertaken by the user entity with respect of the services that has been provided by the service organization. So nature and materiality of the transaction. Then, sorry friends, some lighting issue, 1 minute. Then what? There should be some agreement. Suppose this is the service organization, this is the user entity. While providing services to the user entity, before that user entity may provide a request or request to the service organization. So after examining this request, there should be an agreement or contract in between what? Service organization and user entity. That is, AC between service organization and user entity should be examined by auditor of the user entity. So what? Examine AC among or between user entity and service organization, right? That is, auditor of the user entity should examine the agreement or contractual terms and conditions in between the user entity and service organization, plus degree of interaction in between user entity and service organization. So auditor of the user entity, I will explain once more. This is the regular procedure that is to be determined. This is not what additional, this is the regular procedure. SA 315, that is identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, plus auditor have to determine whether there exists any control procedure which has been exercised by the user entity with respect of the services which has been provided by the service organization. Natural significance and as well as what the effect of services. Then natural and materiality of the transaction which has been processed by the user entity. Then auditor should examine the agreement, contracts, terms and conditions in between the user entity and service organization, plus examine degree of interaction. degree of interaction in between the user entity and service organization, degree of interaction between the transactions of the user entity and service organization, right? Then what? Then it is the relationship between user entity and service organization. This have to be determined by the auditor of the user entity. So this is the regular procedure. So it is simply means auditor of user entity should obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the services which are provided by the service organization to the user entity. How can they obtain the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence? By examining user manual, technical manual. In between there were some interruptions. Then they can also use what? Reports. Reports can be issued by the auditor of the service organization or by the service organization itself, or internal auditor of the service organization, or any regulatory authority, mainly about the operational efficiency of the internal control system. So auditor, that is auditor of the user entity, have to obtain sufficient and appropriate information with respect of what? The internal control system, with respect of the transaction processed by the service organization, which can be obtained with the help of user manual, technical manual, reports, auditor reports which has been issued by the auditors of the service organization, or what? Service organization itself, internal auditors, regulatory authorities with respect of the operational efficiency of the internal control system. Okay. So here it is the user entity and it is the service organization. User entity asking the service organization. So service organization is providing or telling that you can't inspect or you can't make the audit of each and every aspect because we are outsourcing many services. It will be difficult. Each and every auditors with respect of each user entity comes to us for the purpose of this. So you can have these kinds of information. Plus, auditor of the user entity may examine what? Report. The report can be type 1 report, type 2 report. Okay, type 1 report and type 2 report. Then auditor of the user entity may visit the service organization, right? They may what? Visit the service organization, or they may contact the service organization through user entity for the purpose of certain specific information. So first of all, auditor of the user entity may use report. Report can be type 1 report or type 2 report. This is issued by auditor of the service organization, right? Auditor of the service organization may issue type 1 report or type 2 report which has been issued by the auditor of the service organization. So auditor of the user entity may have the option to visit the service organization for the purpose of understanding their internal control system, the operational efficiency of the internal control system. They may also contact the service organization through the user entity with respect of obtaining certain specific information. Then before using this report, type 1 and type 2 report, we know that the type 1, type 2 report is issued by auditor of the service organization. So auditor of the user entity have to determine their competence, that is whether they are chartered accountants. They have to be chartered accountant, plus they have to issue such a report on financial statements of the service organization as per SAE 3402, right? That is, auditor of the user entity have to determine whether the information which has been obtained by type 1 and type 2 report is sufficient and appropriate. This has been ensured by the auditor of the user entity by determining their competence. So competence of the auditor of the service organization and whether they are following SAE 3402, that is the professional or standards on auditing, while making such an audit on service organization. Now we have to check what is mean by this type 1 report and type 2 report. What is mean by the type 1 report and the type 2 report? So, sorry friends. Why internal control system is existing in an organization? This is containing the policies, programs, process that is to be followed by an organization or business undertaking mainly for the purpose of attaining their objective. Correct? So this internal control system, or while attaining these objectives, they may also have to process some transactions, etc. So there exists what different process. Then each and every process may include what different types of risk, right? So as to overcome these risks, they should ensure what control activities. They should include what control activities and have to determine. So type 1 report is mainly providing details with respect of what? This only. So type 1 report is mainly stating what these are the process and these are the possible risk with respect of this process, and there is existing what control activities. That is type 1 report provide what description, design of the internal control system in the service organization. This is provided in the type 1 report. But type 2 report provides what? Description, design and operational efficiency of the internal control system at the service organization. That is, type 2 report is providing what? The different process and the risk that may be happened to that process and the control activities which has been undertaken so as to overcome these risks, and plus what? Whether these control activities is operating efficiently and effectively. This is also discussed in type 2 report. So auditor of the user entity may always prefer to use what? Type 2 report. If type 2 report is not available, they may use type 1 report. Then auditor have to determine whether they are in a position to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of type 1 report. In case if they are not able to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the type 1 report, they may perform additional audit procedure. Right? So we are moving towards the next part, and after completing all this, I will provide a chart through which you will be able to easily understand and easily represent or easily answer what is in essay 402. Okay. So here we discuss that this is the user entity, this is the auditor of the user entity. Auditor of the user entity have to determine what? Risk of material misstatement as per essay 315. If they identified any risk of material misstatement, they have to respond appropriately as per essay 330. So they can perform what? Test of control and as well as what? Substantive procedures at the assertion level. Right? Substantive procedures. So for test of control, they may always prefer to obtain what? Type 2 report issued by the auditor of service organization. Right? Then substantive procedures. That is, so as to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the operational efficiency of the internal control system and to determine whether they are providing true and fair view of the state of affairs with respect of the financial statements of the user entity. They may also have to obtain what? The risk of material, whether there is a risk of material misstatement at the service organization. Okay. In responding towards what? That risk of misstatement identified as per essay 315, in according to essay 330, auditor shall determine what? The auditor have to determine whether sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the financial statement is available or not. So which is mainly stated that suppose this is the auditor is performing essay 315 function and he is identifying what? Risk of misstatement. So auditor have to what? Respond towards the assessed risk of material misstatement as per essay 330. In that case, auditor have to determine whether sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of what? Certain financial statement assertion is available from the records which has been maintained by the user entity. That is, auditor should determine whether the user entity's record is providing that much of sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of those transactions or those account which has been outsourced by the user entity to the service organization. So they have different cases. Which are the cases? First one, user entity is maintaining such records and user entity is not maintaining that records. So auditor may require to perform what? Further audit procedure for what? Obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Or auditor may appoint what? Another auditor to perform this procedure at the service organization with respect of the transaction which has been provided by the service organization to the user entity, or with respect of the transaction which has been outsourced by the user entity to the service organization. I hope you are getting some sort of points. I will again explain to you. Okay, it is mainly stating that what? This is the auditor. He is performing audit at user entity. User entity has outsourced certain transaction to the service organization, and service organization is providing that processed transaction to the user entity. So when auditor is appointed, auditor have to determine risk of material misstatement as per say 315 by understanding the entity and its environment. So suppose if the auditor has identified any risk of misstatement, auditor should respond appropriately. SA 330 should be applied. That is, auditor should respond appropriately towards the assessed risk of material misstatement. In that case, auditor should obtain what? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of certain financial statement assertion. Certain what? Financial statement assertion with respect of the services which are provided to the user entity by the service organization, mainly for the purpose of determining whether the control with respect of the transactions is operating efficiently and effectively, or whether the services which has been provided by the service organization is free from the risk of material misstatement, or whether the user entity is making appropriate control procedure with respect of the services which has been provided by the service organization or which has been outsourced to the service organization, and service organization providing that services. So they have two cases. Auditor may perform that procedure, that is, auditor may apply further audit procedure at the service organization for the purpose of determining that is, whether the internal control system with respect to the transaction which has been provided by the service organization to the user entity is operating efficiently and effectively. Or the auditor may appoint another auditor. What? Another auditor for what? To apply this procedure at the service organization and to determine whether these transactions are free from the risk of material misstatement. Then these user entity may maintain what? Records with respect of the transaction which has been outsourced to the service organization, or they may not maintain that books. Maintain records or books, that is, providing detailed information with respect of the transaction which has been processed by the service organization. So what should be the audit procedure that is to be performed by the auditor in this case and this case? Now we are going to discuss this. Auditor may inspect that records. Auditor may inspect the records which has been maintained at the user entity with respect of the transaction which are processed by the service organization. Auditor should determine whether it is reliable. Then, if such a record is maintained by the user entity, auditor may obtain what? Confirmation from service organization. Auditor may obtain confirmation from the service organization if the user entity is maintaining such books of accounts or such records with respect of the processed transaction provided by the service organization to the user entity. Then, in case if they are not maintaining such records, auditor may ask the service organization to provide a statement with respect of the transaction provided by the service organization to the user entity. Then auditor of the user entity may also examine the records with respect of the transaction which has been provided by the service organization to the user entity. That is, service organization may maintain the books or records with respect of that processed transaction or the services which has been provided to the user entity. So auditor of the user entity shall examine that information. Plus they can also visit the service organization. Type 2 report. They may also apply analytical procedure. So first of all, we have discussed what is meant by a user entity and a service organization, right? Why a service organization is appointed, or why they are outsourcing the services. Auditor of the user entity's responsibility. They have to obtain sufficient and appropriate information with respect of the transaction which has been processed by the service organization to the user entity and whether it is free from the risk of material misstatement. That is, auditor may not be able to determine whether the financial statements of the user entity is free from the risk of material misstatement without examining the services which has been provided by the service organization, because risk of material misstatement is the combination of inherent risk and control risk. So auditor is required to determine whether such an internal control system is existing in the user entity and as well as the service organization that is providing the services to the user entity, and it is not possible to the concerned auditor to make an audit at the service organization, because they are handling these activities or they are providing these services to many user entity and not only to one user or single user entity. So auditor should determine whether audit has been undertaken at the service organization. Who is undertaking the audit? He is a qualified chartered accountant or not. Their professional competence have to be considered. Plus, concerned auditor of the user entity should determine whether auditor of the service organization is following SAE 3402 in applying the audit procedures at the service organization. Plus, they may use the report which has been issued by the auditor of the service organization. It can be type 1 report or type 2 report. Type 1 report is only providing description and design of the internal control system. That is, there is exists some process, so as and at the same time there is also exists certain risk, and there is also a control system so as to reduce or control activities so as to reduce the risk. But at the same time, they are not providing type 1 report whether this internal control system is operating efficiently and effectively. So auditor, by understanding by understanding the entity and its environment and to determine risk of material misstatement as per SA 315, they have to respond appropriately, and as a part of this they have to perform certain substantive procedures so as to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence with respect of certain financial statement accession with respect of certain transaction which has been processed by the service organization to the user entity. In that case, they have two cases. User entity may maintain the records with respect of the transaction or may not maintain. In case if they are maintaining, they can examine the record and obtain confirmation from the service organization. In case if they are not maintaining, they can ask the service organization to provide a statement with respect of the services or transaction which has been processed by the service organization on behalf of the user entity. Then they can also examine the records which has been maintained by the service organization in respect or on behalf of the user entity with respect of the services or with respect of the activities or transaction performed by the service organization on behalf of the user entity. So this is a summary, or this is what now we have discussed. Moving towards the next part. Okay, then now we are moving towards the reporting aspects. That is, they are expressing an opinion on the financial statement and they are going to issue an audit report. So whether auditor obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. This is the first question. They may obtain or may not obtain, right? Suppose the concerned auditor of the user entity is not obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the services which has been provided by the or in respect of any matters of the user entity. In that case, they may issue modified opinion. That is qualifications audit opinion. It can be modified opinion or adverse opinion or disclaimer, right? Next case, they obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Even after obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, the concerned auditor is making an analysis or evaluation or examination of examination of type 1 or 2 report. So The next we have to check whether a modified opinion is existing in type 1 report or type 2 report. Suppose there is existing a modified opinion in type 1 or 2 report. Type 1, type 2 report is issued by the auditor of the service organization as per SAE 3402, right? So, sorry friends, I think that I have made a mistake here. That is, suppose auditor is obtaining what sufficient and appropriate audit evidence even after they are referring type 1 or type 2 report. After that, they are going to issue a modification to the audit report, not in this case, okay? That is, the concerned auditor is issuing modification to the audit report. In that case, they have to refer what? Type 1 or type 2 report which has been used by them, or which has been used by them so as to arrive or to obtain information with respect of the operation of internal control system. That is, even after obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, auditor is making a evaluation or examination of type 1 or type 2 report. After examining that, they are going to issue modification to the audit report. In that case, along with that modification, they should refer what? Type 1 report or type 2 report. Plus, they can also include name of the auditor of the service organization if concerned auditor give the permission, otherwise not. If they are issuing unmodified opinion, in that case it is not required to refer what? Type 1 or type 2 report. So, reporting means concerned auditor of the user entity is at the final stage, they are issuing audit report. In that case, determine whether they obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. They have not obtained. In that case, they should issue what? Modification to the audit report. Otherwise, they may obtain what? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence even after they are making examination of type 1 report or type 2 report. After examination of the same, they are going to issue modification to the audit report. In that case, they should refer what? Type 1 or type 2 report which has been issued by the auditor at the service organization. And they may also indicate the name of auditor at the service organization if concerned auditor gives the permission. Suppose even after examining type 1 or type 2 report, they are issuing unmodification. That is, they are issuing audit report without any modification. In that case, it is not required to refer what? Type 1 report or type 2 report. Okay? I hope you have understand it. So here we are explaining the last portion. User entity is outsourcing certain service to the service organization. With respect of that service, suppose they are providing tax planning with respect of the employee's salary and pension scheme to the service organization. Service organization is outsourcing the pension plan to sub-service organization. So the question is whether, I have already explained additional audit procedure that is to be performed by the auditor at the user entity with respect of what? Internal control system at the service organization, or in respect of the transaction which are provided by the service organization on behalf of the user entity. So next question is the concerned auditor of the user entity is required to apply such types of further audit procedure at the sub-service organization? This is the question. In that case, we have to check type 1 report or type 2 report which has been issued by the auditor of the service organization. Suppose X is the auditor of the service organization and they are issuing type 1 report or type 2 report. In the type 1 report, type 2 report, they are provided or they are included what? Matters in respect of what? Control objective or related control in the sub-service organization. That is, auditor of the user entity have to determine the service auditor's report, that is, which may include or exclude sub-service organization's relevant control objective and related control in the service organization description. It means that if the service organization type 1 or type 2 report is providing description, design or operational efficiency of the sub-service organization internal control system, auditor of the user entity is not required to perform such additional audit procedure or further audit procedure with respect of the sub-service organization. At the same time, if the type 1 report or type 2 report which has been issued by the auditor of the service organization is not providing description or design or operational efficiency of the internal control system or its objective which is existing at the sub-service organization, plus the services which has been provided by the sub-service organization to the service organization with respect of or which is relevant to the user entity or which is significant to the user entity, auditor may require to perform what? Additional procedure. So, nature and extent of additional audit procedure that is to be performed by the auditor of the user entity depends upon whether the audit report or type 1 or type 2 report or inclusion or exclusion of control objective which is existing at the sub-service organization in type 1 and type 2 report. That is, whether the same is included, auditor is not required to perform. But if that it is not included, they have to perform what? Additional audit procedure. So, the nature and extent of additional audit procedure to be performed by the auditor of the user entity with respect of the control objective of the sub-service organization is depends upon what? Significance and significance of the transaction which has been processed by the sub-service organization on behalf of service organization with respect of the transaction outsourced by the user entity to the service organization. I hope you have understand it. Actually, if you have any problem in understanding the concept that I am discussing, you should put a comment on the comment box. If you want to explain in Hindi, after explaining in English, I will explain the same. Okay. So, here we completed what? Essay 402. First, we discussed what is mean by user entity, service organization. Auditor of user entity should follow Essay 402. Auditor of the service organization should follow SAE 3402. Auditor of the user entity should obtain what? Risk, whether there exists risk of material misstatement as per Essay 315. They should determine it. For that, they should obtain what? Control, sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with respect of the control existing at the service organization. So, they are performing what? Additional audit procedures such as visiting that service organization, obtaining or contacting service organization through the user entity to obtain what? Specific information, examining what? The contractual terms and conditions, determining their relationship, degree of interaction, significance of the services, effect of the services and nature of the services provided by the service organization to the user entity, materiality or nature of the transaction processed by the user entity, whether user entity having some control procedures or they are maintaining records with respect of the transaction which has been processed by the service organization on behalf of the user entity. Even after that, auditor may examine what? User entity's books with respect of the services provided by the service organization. They may obtain confirmation from the service organization. If they are not maintaining, the auditor of the user entity may ask the service organization to provide a statement with respect of the services or transaction processed on behalf of the user entity. They may also examine or visit the service organization, examine the records maintained by the service organization, use type 1 or type 2 report. The main difference between type 1 and type 2 report that we have discussed, if they are providing information with respect of what? Design and description of internal control system, this is type 1 report. Auditor of the user entity should always prefer to use what? Type 2 report, because this is providing description, design along with the operational efficiency of the internal control system, through which auditor may determine whether the transaction performed by the service organization on behalf of the user entity is free from the risk of material misstatement. And then sub-service organization, if user entity is allotting certain works to service organization and as a part of or any part of that work is allotted by the service organization to the sub-service organization, whether auditor of the user entity is required to perform further audit procedure with respect of what? Sub-service organization as a part of understanding the risk of material misstatement. So, if description, design and design and operational efficiency is included in the report which has been provided by the auditor of the service organization, auditor of user entity is not required to perform it. Otherwise, they may perform additional audit procedure in according to the nature and extent of what? Natural significance of services provided on by the sub-service organization. Then reporting, that we already discussed. If they obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, they may issue unmodified opinion. Before that, if they are examining type 1 type 2 report, and if after examining that type 1 type 2 report they are issuing modified audit opinion, they should refer type 1 or type 2 report, and if the auditor of the service organization permit, they can also refer their name. Otherwise, if they are issuing unmodified opinion, it is not required to refer what? Type 1 type 2 report. And if they are not obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence, they should issue modification to the audit report. This is what? SA 402.